Welcome everyone. This is Citlalli from Mexican Excellence. And today I have a very, very special guest. I've been wanting to have him on our channel for a while. His name is Jaguar Arreola. The way I met him is a couple of years back through his music. He is a very talented hip hop artist talking about decolonization, uplifting, educating people with his lyrics. He will talk to you a little bit about himself. So, everyone, please help me welcome Jaguar Arreola to Mexican Excellence.
Thank you. So, Grand Rising, good afternoon, good evening from wherever corner of the globe you're joining us from. My name is Jaguar Arreola. First and foremost, thank you, Citlalli, for having me join you. I'm very honored to be on your platform. I'm very thankful. I congratulate you and celebrate all your successes in motherhood and education. Everything you're doing for our community, online, in person, however it may be. So, for real, thank you. Um, so my name is Jaguar Arreola, and I'm a hip hop artist. I'm part of a hip hop duo called Kozmic Force, and that's spelled Kozmik Force for anyone that may want to check us out. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, all the major music platforms is where you can find our music, along with my own music as a solo independent artist. Again, Jag Arreola. And I'm from the Inland Empire region of California, which consists of the San Bernardino and Riverside counties. But it's indigenous land of the Yuhaviatam, Tongva, Cahuilla, Luiseño people, right? And many other nations, many other tribal nations. But that is where I grew up. I grew up in a migrant community, predominantly indigenous migrant community from places like Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras. You know, those are the main communities of gente that I remember growing up around. My friends when I was a child. My homie, his parents were from Honduras. My other friend, their parents were from El Salvador, Nicaragua, and a lot for sure from what we all call today Mexico, right? And so yeah, I grew up here. I grew up, playing sports, a two-parent household. I was very loved at home. I'm very loved by my family, and I feel like that's played an important role into any kind of success to whatever degree I may have achieved. Personal success, just growth, and having um, um, a healthy mind. It's been because people love me, right? It's been because I've had a father that really cherishes me, my mother. Um, so I wouldn't be anything I am if people didn't love me the way they did. Um, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful said. Beautifully said. I have a question. So let's go back to
Sure.
the beginning, right? To as far as your your journey with identity, your journey with understanding your indigenous identity. Can you tell us when that started for you? What people know today as decolonization. I've been doing this for a while. So back in the day, it was called knowing your history. But now, people are calling it decolonization, reconnecting. Can you take us
Right.
back to your specific journey? Where did it all start? How did you nurture it? And where are you now as far as that journey that people consider or know as decolonization?
Thank you for the question. So definitely, I would say I had an earlier understanding of it, as opposed to some of my other comrades I've met in this movement and this journey. My journey was a little bit earlier, I'd like to say, to a certain degree. It was more of a political, uh, you know, uh, a political approach as instead of a historical one. I guess historical as well, but more so a very uh, un-American approach. Against the white establishment of the United States of America. That was my approach, and it was because my father is very politically educated on our history, and in what a lot of people today would call Latin America, what we call Abya, right? Anything south of the colonial border of the United States. You know, my dad always made me very aware growing up, and I know for my community that if they may check this interview out. I've said this on other platforms, but he just made me aware that the only reason we were here, we ended up here, is because of, the white American establishment, causing our people to suffer everywhere in Mexico, Central America, South America, the Caribbean. Um, and so I was always aware, I was always unpatriotic to, the U.S. flag, the U.S. The Star Spangled Banner, the Pledge of Allegiance. I never felt it in my heart or anything like that, because my father planted those seeds very, very early on, and his approach was more of a, you're Mexican, you're not American. Yeah, sure, you were born here, right? Because I was born on this side of the colonial border. However, he always made me aware. He said, they, meaning those in the dominant society, the white establishment, they're not ever going to look at you as one of them, because you are Mexicano, eres Mexicano, and one major thing was sports. Whenever I used to compete in sports, my father always told me, whenever we'd go compete against schools from other areas in the Inland Empire or in the Los Angeles County or the San Diego County, I noticed that schools that were predominantly white always had just better equipment. They were more resourced, more, they had the cool gym bags, the cool gear, and we were definitely underserved. Our just everything about our journey from where I'm from, it was always like, oh, here come those Mexicans for sure. Like, oh, they're super Mexican because they look poor and things like that. So my dad always said, you have to put it down for your people now, because when you're out there competing against, a team, and they're a bunch of white guys that are privileged, you got to show them what time it is, and it's a combat sport that I did. I wrestled. So he always said, you got to hold it down for your people. You got to represent your gente, you're Mexican, and they look at you as a Mexican, and they, so it was always a very, I want to say like a race thing, because my dad was always aware that we are indigenous, but he just presented it with we're Mexican, it was just presented with a different vernacular, vocabulary, whatever. But I was always aware that that I had this indigenous pride in me, and then it came from my dad's education of just the experiences that our gente has had in south of the colonial border. My roots go back to Michoacan and Guanajuato, and I'm of Purepecha and of Otomi origins, very distant. However, they live forever, eternally in my heart, in my mind, and in my spirit. So, I do carry that with me. I do let that be known. And yeah, so, growing up, it was my dad's educational, just game about, hey, the Yankee imperialists, they have hoarded all the wealth. They've stolen all the wealth from our homelands, right? From Nicaragua, from Mexico. And that's the thing, is that even though my dad is a very proud Mexicano, he never saw, I didn't ever grow up with any kind of xenophobia towards people from other parts of, our diaspora south of the border, right? From Latin America. It was always like, they're our gente, they're our gente. We're all migrants here, and he always let me know that they've actually been through a lot, because they've experienced civil wars more recent than our people in the colonial Republic of Mexico. So I was just always aware of things like this. And even my dad was very educated about to whatever degree he could about the African American experience, the Black experience in the United States. He always, because I used to listen to rap, and he would, hip hop, and to my family in Mexico, he used to tell, oh, like, a le gusta el rap, le encanta el rap, es lo que le escucha. And when I would listen to it, I would ask him questions about, like, I'd listen to rap, and all these places, these communities that a lot of these Black rappers are mentioning, they're predominantly, Africano, Black communities. So my dad always let me know. So those are under-resourced communities, right? Because the white establishment wants to keep their communities like that, the same way they've done to us in our diaspora and things like that. So again, I'm very thankful that I have this early militant approach, And I'm thankful that it wasn't that it was a militant political approach, because I've met, community members that come through with like a more of a, I would say like a spiritual prayer approach. And I want to say, if that would have happened to me, it would have probably held me, depending on what kind of spirituality or theology and cosmology I'm given, it might not make me as militant and radical as I started, So definitely being aware of the atrocities and just the education of like what, the US did when they funded the Salvadorian military in El Salvador, how they funded the Nicaraguan Contras, I was already aware of Sandino in Nicaragua, right? And his indigenous-led movement, right? And the FMLN in El Salvador, and regardless if they're using Soviet weapons and things like that, I was just, I was always aware that the reason for our suffering was because of the place where I live. And he always told me, he said, and don't ever let anyone tell you, oh, well, why do you live here then? You always tell them you're here because they were destroying our homeland. So we have nowhere else to go. You've left us homeless, right? And we are homeless in our own continent, right? In our ancestral continent. So again, my approach was very, it came early on, earlier than others. Eventually, I stumbled across some YouTube videos of an organization you were once part of. And it was through a lot of that educational lecture, just what I came across, from that movement and that organization, I learned a lot. That's when I kind of became educated about, oh, I'm not Latino, I'm not Hispanic. I never really identified with those terms, to be honest. I'll tell you, Hispanic, for me, it never flowed, because I was always like, I'm Mexican, I'm not Hispanic, soy Mexicano, right? And then Latino, growing up in my era, there was a big reggaeton era. So when I heard Latino, to me, in my mind, it was always like, it gave me a Caribbean vibe, right? And it gave me like a Daddy Yankee, Don Omar, right? Just the very prominent reggaeton artists who are, very, I enjoy the music when it's around. I love it, right? But I didn't really feel like it included Mexicans, right? Because in my mind, growing up, when people used to always tell me, oh, you look very Mexican. And when they said that you look very Mexican, it was usually in a condescending way. It wasn't in a friendly way. It wasn't in a way to compliment me, right? Versus me hearing when other ethnicities from Latin America are presented as like, quote unquote, more exotic, which is also problematic and racist, has its own, racism towards it. But from my experience growing up, being Mexican was not cool in any way, shape, or form. It was like, oh, you're just another Mexican in California, right? So for me, it was always like Latino. It just really gives me off a Caribbean vibe. I'm not from the Caribbean. However, I am aware that our Caribbean indigenous relatives are the first to face off against the colonizers. So they're very dear, and I love my Caribbean relatives, and I have a lot of supporters from that diaspora, that support my music. So I'm very thankful, and they're our cousins, right? Just like our relatives up in Ku Klux Klanada and in the United Snakes on every reservation over here, right? So yeah, so Latino, Hispanic, no, and then even on top of the organization that you were once a part of, I was made aware. This is what these terms do to us. They strip us from our identity as First People, as pueblos originarios, indígenas, Masawali, right, Nicantlaca, whatever term people chose to run with, right? And so yeah, I kind of became more aware of these things through that, and it was YouTube. I remember just watching. I must have been, I want to say I was like maybe my first year of college. I was a freshman in college, and I was at Mount San Antonio College in the Pomona Walnut area. And I had a Chicano studies professor. Her name was April Thesis. Big shout out to her. Also supportive of my music journey, right? She kind of like the first day in class, she asked us, what do you guys identify as? And to me, it was like, I was like, Mexican, And I hear other students say Hispanic, Latino, others Mexican American. And it's just like, we get all these to brown, Salvadorian, you know, so and so. And some people just said, I don't know, American. Some people just said American when they look like they could be Sitting Bull's twin, right? And to me, it was like, okay, damn, like this is interesting, you know. So I was already, you know, I had already seen some of the lectures online from the organization you were part of, being aware of my own journey with my father. But now it was like, okay, like this is interesting. So she put us up on game about how most Mexicanos, most Central Americans, most South Americans are of indigenous origin. So the same message that you've been sharing for, you know, I think what 20 years, over 15 years, right? And other comrades, right? Because people have done this before me, before you, before them, right? So this, you know, we're not the first, and we definitely won't be the last people to let everybody know that, you know, we are the first people of this continent, right? The first people of Abya Yala, Turtle Island. So definitely college was helpful, you know, community college. And I would say definitely, I mean, it's a community college for me. I'm very proud to have come out of a community college, because to me, it's just like you come from that grind, because it's like, it's what's accessible to a lot of our gente, right? You know, sometimes we can't. I didn't have any clue how to apply to a university straight from high school, maybe because of my own bad decisions, but also no counselors, things like that, right? Under-resourced, not given access to that, to those advantages. I didn't have a sibling, anybody in my family that had been to college before me. I was the first person to do it, you know? So again, when I did that, I'm very proud, and, you know, to have come out of that, you know, although it may be a colonial institution and it is through their, you know, colonial academia, you know, I still occupied it. I still did my thing. I still showed up, super dark brown, super, you know, Mexican, super Chicano, super indigenous, and best believe Citlalli, I was in there ready, you know, like my classmates were always like, oh shit, here comes this guy again. Like he's gonna talk about the white establishment and the white dominant society. And it was like that in every class, because the more I became educated, the more I wanted to share this information, because it's colonial for me to keep it, right? I don't want to keep this different. I got to pass it on. I got to share it the same way you've been doing. You share that all the time, right? You gift us so much information, you know, through your labor of studying. And, you know, for me, being in the classroom, I was like, I'm not going to let someone praise law enforcement here, especially when I have the knowledge that I can share. And I do present it in a way that's friendly at first, but if people are not vibing with my friendliness, I gotta like kind of like be a little more not aggressive, but set my tone like straight, like, no, you guys are supporting an institution that is very anti-black, very anti-indigenous, anti-Mexican as hell, for sure. You know, whatever terms we want to use, because a lot of times I say anti-indigenous, and most of the gente in the class that are indigenous, they're just not aware of it. Right away, they kind of don't pay attention to the conversation because they didn't mention them. But if I say it's anti-Mexican, it's like, oh shit, you know? So definitely, so yeah, community college, MM lectures online, you know, and community, you know, being out there in the community, actually, you know, being involved in, you know, mutual aid, you know, so-called activism, things like that. And just kind of like meeting people of different walks. You know, I started meeting people that come from a more militant-minded approach to our collective liberation, diversity of tactics, you know, community organizing, campaigns, having people sign petitions. I did all that, knocked on doors all over San Bernardino, knocked on doors all over, you know, Rialto, many different communities. And again, you know, just being out there with the community, you know, participating in you know, having experience intertribal ceremonies, things like that, because I didn't come from a ceremonial indigenous background. You know, my background is just relatively you know, Catholico, Christian. You know, one of my grandmas was very Christian. One of my other grandmas is Catholic. So that was my background. You know, thankfully, I want to say, even though my dad is you know, he identifies, you know, with Catholicism, he's always more on the agnostic approach, kind of just like, I'm just a humble human. I don't know what's out there. I don't want to say, so it just is what it is. And him not being so drilled into the church, or being like, we got to go to church on Sundays, it was actually a win for us, because he took us to go play soccer instead on Sundays. It was like, I'd rather take my kids out, be with them on Sunday instead of us being at the church. He was always critical of the church, very critical of the Vatican. You know, things like this is like, you know, I'm very thankful my dad was up on game. And my mom is as well, because my pops has shared some of that information. My mom was just kind of like, you know, she's just like a little different. Like she knows it. She'll just bring it up when, if, you know, like when she's comfortable, she'll just start sharing like political like opinions and like, you know, about colonization. She's very educated about, you know, the Spanish colonization on our people, things like that. So yeah, you know, that's a little bit about my journey. I know I talked a lot, so
No,
um,
thank you. Thank you for that. That's very insightful. Like that's puts everything into context, you know, and I'm hoping for people that are watching you, listening to us, like I love to hear those stories because I think a lot of people feel sometimes like it's something too foreign for them, right? Decolonization. So I love
yes.
that you shared that. And you know, speaking about you're a hip hop artist, right? Like you have powerful lyrics. People use it and reference it a lot on TikTok, especially lately. You know, where
Yes.
do you get inspired to? Where does that become? Where was, you know, Jaguar Arreola, the hip hop artist? How was that born? How did you start writing? Where did you start performing? Like, what was your relationship to hip hop as a creator?
So thank you for the question. So definitely, just I'm inspired by a lot. You know, not just rap artists or hip hop artists themselves. I'm inspired by the señor doing custodial work at the mall when me and, you know, my partner are walking in the mall, and I see our gente, and I'm like, damn, like this is unacceptable. How, you know, our people have become, you know, our people are just we're in these positions where we're at the bottom of, you know, this capitalist white supremacist system. And you know, that I definitely get inspiration, you know, just from seeing, it's just lived experience, you know, whether it's my own experience or the person next to me, you know. I may be share it when I write a lyric, maybe two or three bars are not from my own personal life or my own personal experience, but it might be from somebody I know, or from a film, or from, a journal I read, a PDF I read about our people. And I just try to, find inspiration from anything and everything, right? Because everybody's got something to offer. Everybody's got something to offer, especially the panadero, the panadera, the señora, selling at the local cardenas, right? I'm inspired by their struggle. I'm inspired by their resilience, because um, those are a hint, and just, I'm inspired by other communities' resilience, right? The Cambodian community, the Polynesian, the African community, everybody, right? The Middle Eastern community, because we are all, under the boot of colonialism. We're all under the boot of, the white establishment, capitalism, and all that. So I definitely seek, inspiration. Definitely inspired by your work. Definitely inspired by your work, other comrades online, people I've met in person, and just trying to present. When I create art, it's not presentación, right? It's a presentation. I want to present something. It's theater. It's dramatic. It could be like a telenovela, right? Anything. So just the other day, we were filming a music video in Pomona. Shout out to anybody from Pomona. I know Pomona is like I remember someone saying one time, if you want to go to an indigenous reservation, go to Pomona, go to East LA. That's an indigenous reservation right there. That's nothing but native people there, right? And when I was in Pomona the other day, our cameraman Yoalmo, shout out to Yoalmo, good people. He was filming us, and he said, "You guys got to do more movement. Be super energetic, explosive, because you guys, as much as I'm aware that your purpose is beyond entertainment. Your music is definitely more than just entertainment, but at the end of the day, it is entertainment, right? So I want you guys to be super dramatic, super theatrics. I want to see you guys like, if you're talking about, throwing a Molotov at, the headquarters of the enemy, I want you to throw that Molotov at the camera, right? Make the movement. So again, trying to make it as, you know, appealing to the audience, to as real as possible, so that whether it's a visual, whether it's a lyric, I'll re-record a verse over and over. I'll re-record half a verse over and over, and I'll hear it and I won't like it. I'm like, I'm not gonna roll with it. So they're just kind of working hard on it. Definitely inspired by many artists. I'm inspired by one of my my favorite hip hop artists is a brother named Immortal Technique. I actually do give him a lot of credit for my own journey into decolonization, because a lot of his lyrics were very just, they were different, and they were very aligned with what my father taught me. So it's kind of like, oh shoot, everything my dad said about Yankee U.S. imperialism, we're here because Uncle Sam was there in our territories, taking our resources. Wow, like it was a very global approach, global politics and things like that. But it also had a lot of indigenous, African, Asian, people of all backgrounds that have been, again, under the boot of under the boot of oppression. So definitely, that brother, big shout out to him. He's very good people. A lot of artists. I've been inspired by a lot of artists, but definitely a lot of writers, teachers, educators, all that. And I'm very thankful. Shout out to my brother Native Threat. He helped me as well a lot. He's helped me grow. He's been rapping a lot longer than I have, like 10 years before me. So I think I think he should definitely be on your show. In the future. I think he would like that, and I think you guys would have a good plática. He's definitely got a story to share, very different from mine, but we're from the same community, the same neighborhood. I was making a sand castle in one sandbox, and then he was at an elementary school, like maybe like 2 miles away, but in the same neighborhood, right? Not knowing each other, eventually we would team up and create some impactful art that, I say humbly, because we still have a lot of work to do, right? People say, oh, thank you. You guys music is dope. We like what you do. So you know what? Thank you. But I know we got work to do, right? Because we always got to keep pushing. We can never settle, So definitely, I'm inspired by a lot of artists. I'm inspired by my mother, my father's journey, right? And my family's experience too in Michoacan, because, my family comes from a region in Michoacan that is, there's a lot of conflict goes on. So the resilience that my family, to even survive and still live there, and just kind of like still do their thing, it's very humbling just to know that those are my people, right? I go visit often, things like that, but again, it's just, our journey. I remember one time I asked my mother, my mother's a mother, so my grandmother, rest in power, I said, because they used to say, oh, que su abuelo de ella, su papá era un indio, right? So now I was very curious, like what nation, what community, what pueblo, what tribe, etc. And then, like, she was the one who told me he was Otomi, right? From Guanajuato. Now, I was always under the impression that my entire family was from Michoacan, and that's where our lineage has been, since forever. However, just kind of like digging, I come to find out that, yeah, a lot of my lineage does also come from Guanajuato. It's the border, I guess, the border of Guanajuato and Michoacan. They're right next to each other, and the Otomi communities exist in both Michoacan and in Guanajuato, in that specific area. And also, even in the pre-Hispanic period, during the Purépecha Empire's reign, the Purépecha accepted Otomi refugees, Mazawa refugees, other Chichimec refugees, nomadic Nahuatl refugees into their empire, and they were citizens, but they were also still able to keep their own ethnic identity, right? Being Otomi, being Mazawa, etc. Because they were refugees from what was going on in Tenochtitlan at the time, the way they ran things. So again, for me, it's very humbling, to know I can, place my lineage, point it to somewhere. I understand that not a lot of us can, because of our experience with colonialism. Some of that identity, that knowledge is lost forever, but nonetheless, we're here, right? And identities change, right? Identities change, and it's in the not identities, but I want to say, like, You know, if I didn't know my direct ancestral lineage, I would simply identify with being, you know, from what is today Michoacan, right? From what is today Guanajuato in the colonial Republic of Mexico. But those territories is where my, you know, where my grandfather, my grandmother bled, died, cried, planted seeds, planted corn, you know, ate armadillos, ate, you know, turkey, because they ate all that, right? Rabbit, pato, duck, all that, todo, de todo. Iguanas, right? My primos in Michoacan still, they still eat iguanas, right? We still eat a lot of very ancestral food, and even the food that may not be, that came after colonialism, we add our own flavor to it, right? Just like our Spanish, it's a colonial language. However, I never I never discourage anybody from learning Espanol, especially if you know, if we live here and, you know, more and more migrants are coming from, you know, south of the colonial border. We need to be able to help our people. It's a tool to communicate, you know, you know, just like, you know, and even on the global revolutionary mindset, if I know there's an influx of Arabic refugees, shoot, I might want to learn Arabic to be able to support their community, right? It's helpful, you know, on a more global solidarity tip, right? And yeah, Spanish, it's a colonial language. It was forced on our people. You know, I don't know my indigenous language. I know a couple words in Otomi, more than a couple words in Purepecha. But again, a lot of our people, a lot of our indigenous people only speak Spanish or only speak English or both. And then a lot of people, of course, still speak our original First Nations tongue. But yeah, I hope that answered a little bit.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Very educational as well. And thank you. I think you hit on the reconnecting, which we're gonna get into towards the end. But what I want to
Sure.
ask you, you and Native Threat have a shirt that says "Sobriety is sacred." When I saw that, it was like impactful, deep, like it's the first time I had ever seen anybody bring in the element of sobriety to the circle of decolonization, right? Like that's
Right.
that I had never seen before, and like I know some folks have different views on it, but I thought the way, like you're saying, like art is representation, art is you're bringing in knowledge, you're bringing in perspectives. Can you tell us about that? Tell us the relationship, how you see sobriety uh, as part of your decolonization journey, how it's helpful. Where does that idea come from? What inspired that concept? Sobriety is sacred.
Thank you for the question. So yeah, I have a clothing line called, or you know, up. It's kind of in the works still. I just started like pressing more shirts again, but it's a clothing brand called Jaguar Wear. So that is sobriety sacred T-shirts. That's the, you know, that's the message on the shirt that I kind of like put out. There's a feather on it. I have another one with a hummingbird on it, and yeah, um, I do consider myself somebody who creates content online, and sobriety is one of the themas, right? One of the topics I touch on, and I do associate it with our decolonization. Um, I know there was a relative red jacket. I can't recall from the top of my head what nation he was, what indigenous. I believe he was Cherokee. However, don't quote me. Um, and he always said, there's a quote. I saw it online many years ago. I kind of try to find the PDFs, and yeah, he was very against the alcohol that was being given to the native communities by white settlers, white supremacist settlers that were illegally occupying, you know, his part of his people's part of Turtle Island. So it was like they use these tools to, you know, to destroy us, right? To capture us, whether it be mentally, spiritually, right? Um, you know, hold us captive, right? Because when we are drunk, when we are buzzed, when we are high, things like that, you know, I wouldn't want someone taking care of my child that's buzzed, right? My newborn child that's buzzed or that's drunk or that's high. Like, please get away from my child if you're like that right now, right? I wouldn't want someone taking care of my elder, right? My elder, mi abuela, mi abuelito. I wouldn't want someone taking care of them like that if they're buzzed, drunk, or high. I need someone to be completely ready to support, to keep them safe, things like that. We don't have the luxury to be doing that as well, because we're in a state, we're under attack. We've been under attack. So it's very challenging to be on some like, oh, you know, like drink, getting drunk, all that, right? Getting high. Now, a lot of times, some of the feedback I get from community members online is, well, ayahuasca, peyote, mushrooms, and things like that. And my response has always been, I understand that medicines from the earth have been used by our people for thousands of years. However, first and foremost, I will never consume those medicines, right? Because I'm not ready for that, right? I'm not ready for that. I may never be ready for that. And on top of that, there's a lot of healing work I still need to do before I can even be, before I consider myself even worthy of approaching that, right? I wouldn't even hold ayahuasca in my hand. I'm not worthy of that. Not yet. I got to humble myself and be like, you know what? I'm not ready for that. Now, a lot of those medicines are specific to specific traditional communities, right? And the exploitation of a lot of these medicines is an issue, right? Because you allow people from outside of these traditional communities, from outside of the indigenous, community, ethnic backgrounds, things like that. So it becomes exploited. It becomes commercialized, right? People are like, oh wow, I'm flying to the Andean mountains next summer. Can't wait. We already got the hookup for the ayahuasca. A shaman is gonna, hook us up. Woo, woo, we're going to Yucatan y vamos a echarnos un peyote. It's gonna be a good time. So 99% of the time, when I've met or seen people speak on this, it's usually with those kind of vibes, which to me it's like unacceptable, right? Super unacceptable. There's so much work people still got to do, right? Patriarchy, right? Ableism, just there's so much work that people still need to do, myself included, before we can even approach those things, right? And I don't feel holy enough to ever approach that, right? And I got to be ready at all times. It just is what it is. That's my approach. My approach is going to be different than people. People disagree. I'm 100% fine with it. My approach is militant. My approach is very like, I'm ready for whatever. I got to be ready to run from the hudas. If the fucking pigs raid the spot, how the hell am I going to run away if I'm drunk? Like, how the hell am I going to run away if I'm high, right? There's no way I can protect myself, protect my partner, a child, an elder, right? If I'm under the influence, right? And again, that works for me, right? It works for me. Over 20 years sober, never trying it. It's a lifetime commitment. I say sobriety is a lifelong ceremony. I'm sober. I'm in it to win it. I'm not backing down, and I'm pushing this message because more people have received it well, and it's been more helpful to the people that I've been pushing this message. I get the messages all the time. The communication that has been made to me say, you know what? Damn, like it's like a rebirth for me. I dropped the alcohol, I dropped the bud, I dropped it all, whatever, the coke, all that. I said, it's like I was reborn. It's like being a born again Christian without having to go to church. It's all good. You don't need it, right? So that approach came to me though through my dad. My dad was sober my entire life growing up. He was always like, and I've shared this on Step Off Magazine. Shout out to Step Off Magazine, Step Off Radio. My friend Rob Camacho. He's a Chicano journalist from San Diego Cumbia territory. I shared this, my journey with sobriety started with my dad too. My dad's soccer coach in my community, un entrenador de fútbol. and he had a hielera, right? An ice chest. Every day we took it to practice. And it said no gangs, big marker. It was the 90s. There was gang banging, a lot of gang banging in the neighborhood. So no gangs, no drugs, and no alcohol, right? It was written on the ice chest. So he wanted his players, all his soccer players, again, mostly Mexican and Central American. I think we had one white boy. He wanted them to see, you know, that's the message, guys. We don't drink, we don't smoke, we don't do drugs, and we don't join gangs, right? That was his thing to keep us safe, to keep us motivated, just athletic only, blah, blah. And honestly, people were like, oh, so what made you want to become sober? And I'm like, literally that. When I was 5 years old, that was the first time I saw that, right? 6 years old. And I just ran with it. So every time somebody offered me to smoke bud, first time somebody offered me to smoke bud was in 8th grade. I was in an alley. Some people I was with, they were getting artsy on some walls, right? In some alleys, and allegedly, right? Allegedly, it was in the dream. So yeah, we're hanging out in an alley, and the homies, after they did their thing, they were rolling up weed, and I actually never seen weed before. So, and this is not to say like I'm out here on some like, make it illegal. No, I'm 100%. It needs to be decriminalized, right? Right. It grows from the earth, all that, blah, blah. However, I need my people to be aware. I can't have my people be high, right? No. Sobriety in my camp is for show mandatory. Structure and discipline, I need you guys sober. I need my people sober around me. And it can be achieved, right? And it's very helpful. And your ancestors will thank you, and your mom will thank you, I know anybody listen, I know your mamas don't want you doing that, guys, I know your mamas don't want you guys all borrachos, manejando, todas preocupadas por ustedes, porque, right? So again, it's a very, it was just an approach where I was like, I hate to be like, Ronald Reagan, rest in power, rest in piss, Ronald Reagan. Rest in piss, Nancy Reagan, right? Devils from the white establishment. They had that whole campaign, just say no. Now, that doesn't work for everybody, right? Because there's a lot of influences, a lot of trauma. Trauma is the first gateway drug, right? And people don't need to be sober to get shelter, to get food, to be able to, be given, the, human rights, right? No one needs to be sober, right? So I don't want anyone to, take my message the wrong way. However, it is more helpful if we are sober. We definitely need to be sober, especially in the state of warfare, right? Not even warfare. We're under attack, right? We're under a violent assault by white supremacy. So definitely sobriety. No, every time somebody said, "Oh, bro, come on, just try it," I said, "No, I'm good, thank you, though. Appreciate it." Still kicked it with the knuckleheads. All my friends smoke bud. Some of them, bien periqueados, cocaine, all that, right? It was all that. I grew up around that. All my tios are, sadly, a lot of my family members are addicted to drugs. And it's hurt my family, it's hurt my community. So I know what that does. I come from an experience where it literally destroys and separates families. Like it traumatizes communities forever. It's hard to recover from that. So I say it from a place where I've seen that shit. My one of my tios overdosed on heroin in the late 90s. Many of my tios have been killed in Michoacan for drug related things like that. So again, jailed. Everyone's been in jail. All my tios from my mom's side of the family, again, because of just that harm that drugs bring into our communities, right? That of course, we know the CIA is heavily involved. The white American establishment is heavily involved in bringing those drugs in, because again, they depend on us being confused and being harmful to each other, right? Any problems in our communities that we have in poor communities of color, indigenous, Black, Asian, all that, Polynesian, it's drugs and poverty, right? You have poor people, give them a bunch of alcohol, give them a bunch of dope, and you got yourself, a good, you got them in conflict, right? While the white paramedics come pick up the dead bodies the dead Cambodian, the dead Polynesian, the dead Chicano, the dead African American, right? Um, Again, it's, these things are done purposely to harm us, right? I don't blame our people who fall in the trap. I blame the people that set the trap, right?
Right.
Because, you know, we didn't do this to ourselves, right? And there is no such thing as you know, oh, it's easy to quit. It's actually very hard to quit. It's no longer a choice once you've already made the choice. So if you already chose to do, drugs, it's very challenging to leave them because it's chemical warfare. It's chemical warfare inside your body. You might want to say no, but inside it's telling you no. Keep doing it. So again, it's more of a, my thing is like, we talk autonomy, we talk freedom, we talk liberty, but we're leaving out the approach to sobriety. And if we want to be truly free, we want to be autonomous, we want to have control of our first temple, right? Our first Teocalli, our first pyramid, we have to start with our own temple, right? Again, sobriety, your mind will be clear. You're more able to defend yourself, and you're able to defend someone that might not be able-bodied, right? Might not be someone who's vulnerable, a child, an elder, right? And I know you've talked about boxing and things like that, right? And martial arts are very important too, right? In our community, self-defense, learning how to use a firearm safely, things like that. Whatever approach you do, it's definitely. And I myself, I'm trained in various martial arts to a certain degree, right? I'm not out here. I'm not Mr. Rambo, but I'm comfortable enough to be able to leave a situation, hopefully unharmed,
Mm-hmm.
because I exercise, and I try to keep my body ready, even to run from the powers that be, right? I got wheels, Citlalli. I literally, like, I run super fast. I'm always running, like, I'm ready, and I'm sober, and I think it'll be helpful if our community, try sobriety. Definitely it'll be very helpful, and it'll destroy a lot of conflict that happens in our community.
Yeah, that's very powerful because growing up, I grew up in the straight edge scene, like in junior high,
Right,
and I felt really weird because when I would go to these shows, it was like mainly white teenagers. It was really,
right,
because in Huntington Park, Southgate area, like it was rare to see like a Mexicana that was straight edge. So I would have to go to the OC, I would have to go to like these white areas to go listen to like, straight edge hip hop and
right,
and like all this stuff. So it was very interesting because when I saw that, I was like, a part of me kind of faded, through the years because I didn't feel like it was reinforced anywhere. And in my personal journey, my father was killed by a drunk driver. You know,
okay.
um,
Rest in power.
but rest in power by an 18-year-old who was drunk out of his mind. He hit my dad. He was driving to Rosarito, and so that memory, I was 9 years old, of like what alcohol did to my father, but also growing up, like you mentioned, right? Like in our families, like how many conflicts could be avoided had alcohol not been present? How many
Right,
abuse could be avoided had alcohol not been present? So, it really stood out to me, and I think that's very, very powerful, the message that you're giving, because to me, in my own family situation, I'm just like, wow, like, imagine if more of us had taken that commitment, like we would have healed generations, right? Because it's intergenerational, like this
yes,
whole idea of alcoholism, drug abuse. And how many of
right,
our, you've lost relatives, I've lost relatives, I have relatives who are alive today who don't recognize me, who are lost,
right,
they're walking around the streets like they don't know nobody. And so
right, right,
that message that you're bringing and bringing in decolonization, I think is very courageous and brave, because I'm sure, like the counter, right? Like, oh, but
right,
that's, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people feel judged just by saying, so, sobriety is sacred. I think a lot
right,
of people they take it very personal, which
right.
I know that's not the intent, but I think it really forces people to self-reflect, right? Like, what does that mean,
Definitely.
right? Sobriety is sacred. So I'm really,
Real quick, Citlali,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. I do want to add on, because I do notice that it may feel like it comes from a judgmental or maybe like a hierarchical approach. It's never that. Me, when I see people post about, um, let's say one example would be like clean eating, right? For example, clean eating, like, things that are more healthy, whether that approach may be veganism or just eating organic and things like that. I never feel judged. I shouldn't, because I also share a message of that that's not very mainstream. It's very un-American to be sober, because American society, American colonial society is drunk and high all day, right? So when people share a message of like, get off your butt and go exercise, like come on, like you got it. Everyone has that little 10-minute slot, 15-minute slot of their day. And, you know, as much as I might want to like feel triggered and bothered that somebody is sharing this message, and this person might be super fit or no, something. So I might feel a little bit attacked. I gotta check myself and be like, you know what? It's a helpful message. I should not be bothered by this. I shouldn't want to right away put a comment, say, hey, well, you know what? I had a long ass day, and like I'm going through things. It's like, you know, I shouldn't, I should just, from my perspective, I feel like, you know what? Fuck, maybe they're right. Maybe I do need to just go exercise, like 5 minutes up today, do a quick little jog, whatever I can do. Same thing with clean eating. If I see a message that says, clean eating, you're gonna take care of your temple if you eat clean. You know what? Even though I'm over here eating an hamburguesa or a hamburger, wings or something, right? Something that's not healthy or helpful, I guess. You know what? I shouldn't feel judged, because you know what? It's like, damn, you know what? I might just try it tomorrow, because now it's in my head. Like, you know what? Before I buy that burger or whatever, I'll be like, damn, you know what? I'm skipping the burger. I'm doing something different just because of that message. So even with sobriety, it's not a, oh, for life type of approach. I don't expect anyone to be on some like, you know, I'm gonna be, full throttle for life, ya estuvo. No, but take a my intention, and I'm not gonna lie, I've even made it a little more flexible because of some of the judged, I don't know, people might feel, right? So I've kind of even eased it up and said, all right, just take a break from it, right? However, my message was always like, let's go. You got this. Like, you can do this forever, But I get it. Some people miss it. Some people miss those things. But now I always remind people, if you've already beat it, that's a dead enemy. That's a dead reminder of colonization. That's dead and gone. Don't miss it. Move forward. Don't miss those nights of not remembering things, right? Of blacking out. Don't miss those nights of getting into fights and conflicts with boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, friend. You lost a friend because of a bad decision somebody made because they were drunk. You know, maybe you got a citation, a ticket that could have been avoided, things like that, right? Just little things like that. So definitely, if I see a positive message out there that I might feel a little guilty of, like, you know what? I haven't worked out in like 2 months, like, I feel judged. That should just be a reminder for me, like, hey, you know what? It's time to grab a little dumbbell today or something, like, it's all good. No pasa nada. If
Yeah.
someone's reminding me, hey, don't be driving your car so much, it's destroying the environment. I'm not gonna feel guilt tripped over that. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna walk to the liquor store today. Let me just walk if I can. Let me catch the bus. Things like that, because they are helpful. As little as it may be, they are helpful, So definitely, it's anybody listening is never done it from a judgmental approach, from a hierarchy perspective. It's just meant with the intention of like, you know what? It's helpful.
Mhm.
It's gonna move us forward if we leave that behind. Just
Yeah.
period.
Yeah, no, and that's very powerful. Thank you for adding that. And that's one of the things that to me was like, wow, this is like to me a very, very welcoming message, right? Because that's one of the things like we can't control how people perceive the message, but we have
Right.
the obligation to share our authentic selves and what's helping
Yes, for
people.
sure.
You know what I mean? So I think that's powerful. And I love that because it's the whole thing about being defensive and all that. Like, that's also something that we have to reflect on. Like, let's be open. Everyone's journey is different. Like, and let's see, this is like you're saying, it's a healthy message. Let's listen to it. People might not agree, might not take it,
Definitely.
but at least it's there, right? There's that option
Yes.
for folks. And then, especially, I'm thinking about the next generation, right? Like, the bullshit they're gonna avoid, right? If you
Right.
take on this journey, right? This lifestyle this
Yes.
themselves.
Right.
Thank you for that. That's something I really wanted to
Thank
discuss.
you.
I'm glad that you expressed it because that's so powerful, super
Thank you.
powerful. Getting towards the end of our chat lab today, I wanted to ask
Sure.
you, as far as reconnecting, I know a lot of folks are on this journey. I don't know what awakened this interest. Maybe it was post revolutions, what happened last year. Maybe it's all these DNA tests, that people are taking. But there's a heightened
Sure.
like interest in understanding, oh shit, I'm not white. Oh shit, like I'm actually indigenous. Like a lot of our people are on this journey, and I see it in the messages and the comments and how people are interacting with like my platforms.
Right.
Some advice that you have for people that are understanding or embracing for the first time who they are, right? Like you're saying in your background, Otomi, Purepecha, what are some of the suggestions you give folks who are barely starting their journey, who are like, wow, like I've been lied to, I've been taught to be ashamed of who I am, of my grandparents' features. So what does that look
Right.
like? What is your advice?
My advice, thank you for the question. So my advice is definitely be gentle and patient with yourself. It's a lifelong journey, right? And if you're feeling, awakened, aware, it's because it's a calling. Not everybody gets this calling. A lot of times, not everybody gets this calling because they're not exposed to this information, this education, right? So if it came to you, it came to you, and you're, one of the chosen people, right? Not on some like, not on any kind of biblical, perspective or anything like that, but definitely chosen from, from something beyond out there, right? It could just be the forces of nature, right? Everything that gives us life. Be gentle with yourself, be responsible, appreciate we have many indigenous nations and tribes, some that are culturally not here no more, but there are remnants, right? There are many remnants of Chichimeca culture, right? Um, there are in the Sinaloa indigenous territories. There is not a lot of cultures that survived Spanish colonization, right? Because of quote unquote mestizaje. So yeah, so many tribes, traditional tribes and communities, only are remembered in history books. But that's the thing. That's the lie about mestizaje, about being a mixed person. Oh, you are now no longer an Indian. You are no longer indigenous because you are mixed. Those are colonial lies that are, based on a system that's foreign to here, right? Those are not our ways, and they wrote you out of their books. You need to write yourself back in. Write yourself back in. You know, um, you don't need to have a tribe, quote unquote, or a nation, quote unquote, pueblo, to be indigenous. People are indigenous, right? We're from here. We've been here for thousands of years, over 30,000 years. We're the first people here before anybody else. Celebrate that, carry it. You know, I would say, um, you know, be very patient. It's a journey of self-discovery. And trust me, and I've only been at it for, more than a couple of years, little, maybe about 5 years or so, 6 years. Um, People have been at this for a longer time, right? Like Citlalli, like other people in our communities. And again, it's just about being, don't be don't be pushed away by people that are confused about their own identities, right? Because I'm going to address a problem I see with a lot of TikTokers, Instagrammers, YouTubers, right? People that have been confused through Western academia that we are no longer indigenous. And these are indigenous peoples themselves, right? Quote unquote, some people might call them gatekeepers. I just call them confused, right? They're a little confused. They're a little confused about me. I'm not going to have somebody tell me I'm not indigenous, right? First and foremost, because I'm gonna laugh a little bit about that, right? Because I look at myself in the mirror, and I don't think the mirror is appropriating indigeneity, right? The mirror is not appropriating the quote unquote nopal on my forehead, right? I just have it. It is what it is, right? I'm indigenous because my ancestors were indigenous. I've seen people out there say, just because your ancestors were indigenous does not mean you're indigenous. So by that, because, you know, in their minds, they might say, oh, you don't have ties, quote unquote, to a traditional community. Well, the white guy that lives across the street from me, the white guy that lives next to me, he's still European, even though he might not have ties to an Italian community, to an English community, to a Dutch community. He's still a white guy. He's still European to me, right? He doesn't have ties to this continent. I have ties to this continent. My biology, my genetics, my bones, my nose, right? Everything about me, you know, the food I grew up eating, tortillas, chile, all that, right? Squash, all that is indigenous, right? Even the Spanish that I speak, it's not the Spanish from the Castilian kingdom, right? It's not the Spanish from you know, the Iberian Peninsula. It's heavily influenced by a lot of Purepecha words, especially if you grew up in Michoacan. We have so many Purepecha words in the Spanish we speak, right? Regardless if we come from a traditional Purepecha community or we come from a quote unquote a mestizo community, right? And I use quote unquote mestizo because I need people to understand what I'm trying to say, right? But I don't call myself mestizo. The line I say that's a European trophy. That's definitely how I see it. You know, I don't see myself as white. If I go to the Iberian Peninsula, no one there is gonna see me as one of their own. I'm here. I'm home. I have a lot of people that support me that grew up in Europe. Some of them grew up in England, Sweden, Germany, but they're indigenous to the Americas, right? They didn't have the privilege to grow up in our continent, right? We're from here. If you're still living here, like, you know, this is where we're from. It doesn't matter if I go live in Japan for the rest of my life and I die, you know, I learn Japanese, I become a Japanese citizen. That doesn't mean I'm Japanese, right? That means, you know, I'm an indigenous person who learned Japanese, right? Who became a Japanese citizen. And yes, I'm a Japanese citizen, but I'm an indigenous man, right? You know, so don't be discouraged by people that are confused about their own identities, you know, by natives that might be more culturally connected to their communities, to their pueblo, tribe, clan, etc. You know, because they're just perpetuating lateral violence, right? Lateral violence, dismissing, you know, your indigeneity, right? Don't let anyone police that. That's your journey, you know. Uh, you know, I hate to say it, but you don't owe anyone anything, you know. Like, don't let anyone police you, right? Because chances are, you know, these same individuals might not be, you know, as authentic as they claim to be. And what is authentic, right? Because we're all authentic in our own way, right? The señor watching football right now on the Saturday at his house, that's not aware of how indigenous he is. He's from Honduras. He's just, you know, doing his thing. He's just as indigenous as any, you know, culturally aware indigenous person, right? We got to get rid of the hierarchies, right? We talk about, you know, decolonizing and overthrowing the white establishment, white supremacy, right? But we're practicing hierarchical, you know, standards on people, right? So again, I'm just as indigenous as anybody else on this continent, regardless of how culturally they may be connected. And I'm saying this in an English language, right? En la lengua de un hombre blanco, because I also speak Spanish, el español, right? So I speak 2 European languages, but I'm just as indigenous as anybody else, right? Do I have more privileges and advantages over other indigenous people? Absolutely, 100%. I will pass the mic to the person that needs to be heard before I do, right? However, we are the same people, but again, whether you're in a jungle, an apartment complex, in la montaña, in a rancho, in the hacienda, wherever you are, you know, we're still the same people, one drum, one heart,
many tribes, many clans, many songs, many dances, right? Again, don't be discouraged by people, that want to, see how authentic your indigeneity is. There's no such thing, right? There's no such thing. Just follow your heart, be respectful, be responsible, um, you know, appreciate the other tribal indigenous cultures around here. Don't appropriate, right? Just appreciate, um, and ask questions to people, right? Ask questions. People are nice, people are kind. Some people may not be, but don't worry about them, right? Because they're dealing with their own
Yep.
trauma and confusion. So I say, join this journey because keep going, don't give up. Sing, dance, pray, write a book, write a poem, write a song. Um, you know, Adorn yourself in the jewelry that your ancestors wore. So my brothers, my man, women, grow your hair long, right? However you feel you're gonna connect, that's everyone's own journey, right? Um, Again, sobriety, right? Sobriety is decolonial, right? Sobriety is decolonial. So all that I say, language revival, right? You learn an indigenous language, whichever language that may be that you have access to learning, right? Do it in a way that's responsible, where you're respectful, right? You acknowledge whose language that is, right? Because that might not be your people's language per se. Even though we're all one people, we still need to walk, in ways that are responsible, respectful, and yeah, I would definitely say, don't give up, because those who colonized us wanted us to give up, right? Those who colonized us and gave us the mestizo title, the Latino title, the Hispanic title, the title of just any nationality of any republic in the Americas, right? They wanted us that, so that we never go back to who we were, right? That's a victory for them. Don't give them that W. Don't give them that victory. Recover. Colonization is not permanent. It's reversible, right? It's reversible. Ask the people that have regained their freedom from the oppressors taking over their lands, right? Both in militant ways, in ways in the mind, educational ways. There's macro, there's micro, right? Micro would be micro decolonization is just what I do, and then on the macro level is organizing wise, right? Right. What we do together as a people for our collective freedom to move forward, right? Para todos todo, right? So yeah, that's what I would have to say to anybody. Don't give up. Pass it on to your cousins, your primos, primas online. Share things. You might lose people on the way. It is what it is.
Absolutely.
I lost a lot of people. Trust me, friends that like I've loved for all my life. We're on a different. We were vibrating on a different frequency. I had to move in a different direction. It's all love, but I got to push forward with my purpose, your purpose, Citlalli's purpose. Obviously, you guys know Citlalli's purpose. She's been at it. She's still doing it. She's going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm not giving up. I'm in it to win it. I'm in it to win it until the wheels fall off. And if the wheels fall off, put it back on, right?
That's
Keep
right.
going.
That's right. Tlaskamati for that, Jag. And one last thing before I invite you to
Sure.
share like your favorite bars, before we end the charla, I have to.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure people are wondering like, why is he wearing a mask? And I
Oh, yes.
give a little thing like I grew up, with some of my favorite rappers are like MF Doom with
Dope.
mask. Right now
Rest in peace.
contemporary, our people are like Fools Gone Wild, right? Mr. Elo, Mr.
Right, right.
Mask.
Yes.
So what's your
Right.
what's your reasoning behind the mask?
So I didn't start off wearing it. It's kind of I was a big wrestling fan when I was a kid, and I kind of draw the equivalency to a wrestler named Rey Mysterio. He had a Mexican tattoo on his stomach. I'm sure a lot of our people know who he is, Rey Mysterio. It's funny because he started off wearing a mask, then took it off for like 10 years, or lost it in a match, didn't wear it for like 10 years, and then wore it again. And it's funny, as a kid, I used to always Google Rey Mysterio without his mask because I always like wanted to see his face again. So there is probably some uh images out there of me without it, but I wear it just to kind of remain. What I look like matters less. Who I am matters less, because this is the message of so many of our gente, right? So many people's, what I write about, my music, what I put out, my art. I want it to be timeless. it's not just my ideas, it's ideas I've gathered, that I've respectfully used in the good way, from people like yourself, any other writers, educators, revolutionaries. It's our message. It's together, and it matters less who's face is under here, because um, you know we're it's the message is what matters, and definitely, again, I'm in a art that's entertaining. I'm an entertainer at the end of the day, right? So I'm not out here pretending I'm like, gunning, opposition down in the jungle, right? It's entertainment, it's cinema, it's teatro, it's just like any movie, right? I don't want you guys to approach Snoop Dogg and be like, "Hey, bro, did you really kill those 20 people you said you killed in the song?" It's entertainment, guys. So, again, entertainment, it adds to the mystique, right? It adds to the you know for cinema purposes, right? For entertainment purposes. So yeah, and at the end of the day too, you know, the Huda as the pigs are watching. So things like that. I encourage anybody involved in any kind of direct action, any kind of revolutionary work. Yeah, it's helpful depending on what degrees you do it at. It's helpful to consider identity, right? However, me, I'm an entertainer. I make music, so you know I'm not out there doing anything that it's against the law, right, quote unquote. And if I was, I wouldn't incriminate myself on camera because I'm on someone's show, ever, right? I'm actually a law-abiding citizen. So if any law enforcement is hearing this, right? Um, with that being said, the mask. I grew up watching wrestling, lucha libre. I'm Mexican, so Mexican El Santo, right? All those movies. My grandma used to watch El Santo movies, things like that. I always admired the mystique behind the mask. Super cool. I think it's kind of brings a superhero vibe to you know to to the community, right? And it's funny because sometimes I have like a whole mask in my trunk, and like when I'm at work, I'm like, oh shoot, I close my trunk real quick. It kind of feels like I'm Spider-Man. Like they're gonna, oh shit, like they're gonna find my outfit in there. So yeah, that's the reason behind the mask, just for a little bit of everything, a few different reasons.
That's powerful, because I've studied too, like in many indigenous societies, masks were also part of the tradition, masks were also part of the culture. Um,
Absolutely.
More about what they reveal was more important than what they concealed, right? So I
Right. Right.
approach that you're taking, and a beautiful, powerful mask, by the way.
Thank
Um,
you. Yeah. So this is I got this at some lucha libre show. I was in line. I was like, man, that mask. I've never seen the mask like that. Jaguar. I'm like, I gotta buy that. So,
the
and then
name,
the other one, I have
Jack,
a black skull one. The other one's from the 99-cent store. So it's just a plastic mask, but hey, it's been doing the trick. It's funny
uh,
because I always have people at shows come up to me like, bro, like, where'd you get this mask at? It's one of my favorites. I'm like, oh, that one's actually from the 99-cent store. You can find it at any Party City or anything like that. So
yeah.
yeah,
For those watching, I actually I saw your performance, you and Native Thread, and you're wearing the black mask, and I actually have the
yes,
here on YouTube. So for those watching, I will link it to this video interview, as well as
yes,
your social media handles. I know you're very active on Twitter, on Instagram. I know
yes,
music out on all music, applications out there. So with
yes.
that, Jaguar, I wanted to say, Tlaskamati, thank you for being a source of inspiration, for doing the work that you're doing. Me, I've been doing this for 25 years, and sometimes it's like it gets a little tiring, but when
Yes.
people like yourselves, right, seeing people that are bringing this art out, that are spreading this beautiful message of decolonization, sobriety, like it's just really empowering. So I want you
Thank you.
that you are seen, that you are heard, and that you are contributing massive amount of positivity and uplifting our community in ways that we need it, right? We need you. We need you in our community. Um,
Thank you. Likewise, reflection. 100% likewise. We need you. We need your message. We need your education. I'll be joining one of those classes soon, so I might just be in that class with my mask on, doing my homework in there. So thank
let-
you. Thank you for all that you do, for sure.
and Jack, can you share with us one of your favorite bars? It could be a part of the song,
Yeah, of
whatever.
course.
Let
Of course.
with our viewers. You know, share them that hip hop artistry, your specialty. Go for it.
Of course. So what I bring to the team is structure and discipline, no sipping on lean. I'm cultured and militant, scaring the contrarios como el logo de los Raiders. I'm embraced in el Inland Empire. Sobriety is sacred. I'm never lonely. I'm pulling up loco with 20 Shoshones. I'm indigenous only, not mestizo. That's a European trophy. The churches on my block ain't holy. They're reminders that they used to own me. I walk next to Miklante Kutli. I don't get high. You can't confuse me. Don't speak about Jaguar. Salute me or shoot me. I'm doing my duty. A Somali and Citlalli are armored fully. Pass me the ruby as I rebuild my altar. Only my DNA was altered. Spirit wasn't conquered. Jaguar el General. I'm going to hit you with this Mossberg. I'm here with Mexican excellence. Citlalli and NAHUA. We're here. We're indigenous. First people, First Nations. We can't be tamed. We're untamed, unchained.
Woo! I got goosebumps. Woo, woo, woo.
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Jaguar, thank you again for sharing space with our viewers here. I'm going to share this all over on Instagram, on YouTube, everywhere.
Yes. Thank you.
People need to hear.
Thank you so much.
So,
Your platform, your journey, it's super helpful to all of us. We all care about you. We all appreciate you dearly in our, in our cyber community, in-person community, everything. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here. I know for sure this will be one of my favorite platforms to be on, and I'm always down to have a plática here. Whenever you need support, let me know.
Tlaxcamati, I am really, really, really grateful.
Amitla, yeah.
And I will share all of Jaguar Arreola's handles on this video. Anything you want to share, send my way, Jag, so I can go ahead and share it with folks. Everybody, Tlaxcamati for watching Mexican Excellence. We've had our guest, Jaguar Arreola from Kozmic Force, hip hop artist, also has his clothing line. Support, spread the message of decolonization. Tlaxcamati, have a beautiful day, y'all. Tlaxcamati.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Stay safe.